The cargo bay was cold and dark. Vala liked it that way. In the darkness, no one could see her. In the cold, no one wanted to stay long enough to notice her. She knelt beside a broken conduit, her silver-blue fingers working quickly on the damaged wires. Her skin gave off a faint glow. Tiny luminescent freckles scattered across her arms and face like distant stars. Among her people, the Talori, such markings were considered beautiful. But beauty meant nothing without the one thing that truly mattered: pheromones. Every Talori female produced a unique scent, a biological signature that determined her worth in society. The stronger the scent, the more desirable she became. Males would compete for her attention. Families would offer wealth for her hand. She would live a life of comfort, respect, and purpose. Vila produced nothing. She was born broken. A genetic defect, the doctors had said. Rare. Unfortunate. Her parents had tried to hide it at first, hoping it would develop later. It never did. By the time she reached adulthood, everyone knew. The whispers followed her everywhere. The looks of pity. The cruel jokes. She learned to make herself small. She learned to disappear. The conduit sparked, and Vila pulled her hand back quickly. She sighed and reached for another tool. Figa. Deja. This repair should have been done by a team of 3, but no one wanted to work with her. So she did it alone, as always. Footsteps echoed in the cargo bay. Vila tensed but did not look up. She knew the sound of Talori boots, the confident stride of those who belonged. She pressed herself closer to the wall, hoping they would pass without noticing her. "Did you see her?" A male voice said. "Working down here like some kind of servant." "It is fitting," another replied. What else would she do? No family would take her. No male would want her. I heard her parents left the homeworld out of shame. Can you imagine? Producing something like that. Laughter. Cold and sharp. Vila closed her eyes and waited. She had heard these words 1,000 times before. They still hurt, but she had learned not to show it. Showing pain only made them laugh harder. The footsteps faded. She was alone again. She returned to her work, her hands steady even as her heart ached. This was her life. This would always be her life. She had accepted it long ago. The sound of a ship docking echoed through the bay. Vala glanced toward the massive doors as they slowly opened, revealing a small human freighter. It was an older model, well-maintained but clearly not wealthy. The name painted on the side read, "The Morning Star." Humans. Vala had seen them on the station before, but had never spoken to one. The Talori considered them a lesser species, primitive and emotional, with lives so short they barely seemed worth acknowledging. Most Talori avoided them entirely. The ship's ramp lowered, and a man walked out. He was young by human standards, perhaps 30 cycles. He had black hair that fell slightly over his forehead and warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with quiet curiosity. He wore simple clothes, a worn jacket over a dark shirt, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. He noticed Vala immediately. She froze. Her instinct was to look away, to pretend she was invisible. But he was already walking toward her, his expression friendly and open. "Hey there," he said, his voice calm and kind. "That looks like heavy work. Need a hand?" Vila stared at him. No one had ever offered to help her. Not once in her entire life. She began, but the words caught in her throat. The human smiled and knelt beside her, examining the conduit. "Electrical damage? Looks like a power surge fried the main coupling." He glanced at her. "You're doing this alone?" She nodded slowly, still unable to speak. "That's rough," he said. "I'm Jiho, by the way. Part Jahel. I run cargo through this sector. He extended his hand toward her. Vela flinched. She did not mean to. It was instinct, years of expecting cruelty whenever someone reached toward her. She braced herself for the mockery, the sneer, the withdrawal of the offered hand. But Jiho simply paused, then lowered his hand gently. "Sorry," he said. "Different customs, right? I should have asked first." He thought she was following some cultural rule. He did not know the truth. "I am Vela," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Vila," he repeated, as if testing the name. "That's a nice name. Like the constellation." She blinked. "You know of it?" "Sure. Vela is part of an old Earth constellation called Argo Navis, the ship of the heroes." He grinned. Seems fitting for someone working on ships. No one had ever said her name was nice before. Jiho stood and looked around the cargo bay. "Well, I need to check in with station control, but I'll be around for a few days. If you need help with anything else, just ask." He gave her a small wave and walked toward the main corridor. Vela watched him go, her mind spinning. He had spoken to her like she was normal, like she was just another person. He had not looked at her with pity or disgust. He had not laughed or whispered to others. He had offered to help. She looked down at her hands, still holding the repair tool. They were trembling. Perhaps he simply did not know. Humans were ignorant of Talori customs. He probably could not sense her lack of pheromones, could not understand what it meant. Once he learned the truth, he would avoid her like everyone else. Yes, that had to be it. Vala returned to her work, forcing herself to focus on the task. She would not think about the human with the kind eyes. She would not allow herself to hope for something that could never be. But as the hours passed, she found her thoughts drifting back to him again and again. The way he had smiled. The way he had said her name. When she finished the repair and gathered her tools, she paused at the entrance to the corridor. The station was quiet now. The lights dimmed for the night cycle. In the distance, she could see the morning star sitting peacefully in its dock. "He must not know what I am," she whispered to herself. And yet, a tiny part of her, buried deep beneath years of pain, wondered what it would feel like if someone did know and still chose to be kind. She pushed the thought away and walked into the darkness alone. 3 days passed, and Vela could not escape the human dot. It was not that he followed her. It was simply that the station was not very large, and Jiho seemed to be everywhere. She saw him in the marketplace, bargaining cheerfully with merchants. She saw him in the repair shops, chatting with mechanics about engine parts. She saw him in the food court, eating strange human dishes and offering bites to anyone who passed by. And every time he saw her, he smiled and waved. At first, Vela tried to avoid him. She took longer routes to her work assignments. She ate her meals in empty storage rooms. She kept her head down and moved quickly through crowded areas. But somehow, he always found her. Vela. He called out one morning, jogging to catch up with her in a quiet corridor. "I was hoping I'd run into you. How did that conduit repair turn out?" She stopped, her body tense. "It is functional. That's great." He fell into step beside her, matching her pace easily. "I told my sister about it. She said anyone who can fix a Class 4 coupling alone deserves a medal." Vela did not know how to respond. She was not used to compliments. "Your sister?" she asked instead. "Hana. She's my co-pilot." "Well, she's also my mechanic, navigator, and occasional cook. Small ship, so we shared duties." He laughed. "She's better at most of them than I am, honestly." They walked in silence for a moment. Vala kept waiting for him to make an excuse and leave, but he stayed beside her, his presence warm and steady. "Why do you speak to me?" she finally asked. Jiho looked at her with surprise. "Why wouldn't I? I am." She hesitated, searching for the right words. Among her people, She would simply say she was defective, and everyone would understand. But humans did not know Talori biology. I am not someone others choose to know. Jiho frowned. What do you mean? Vila stopped walking. She turned to face him, her golden eyes meeting his dark ones. Among my people, I am considered broken. There is something I cannot do that all other females can. It makes me worthless in their eyes. She expected him to step back, to make an excuse, to suddenly remember somewhere he needed to be. Instead, he tilted his head and asked, "What can't you do?" I cannot produce a certain scent, a biological marker. It determines a female's value in our society. Jiho was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he shrugged. Okay, but you fixed that conduit faster than any engineer I've seen. You clearly know your work. How does some scent change that? Vela stared at him. You do not understand. It is everything to my people. Without it, I am nothing. Well, Jiho said slowly, I'm not your people. And from what I can see, you're definitely something. He smiled. Come on. Hana made too much food again. Have dinner with us. Vala should have said no. She should have walked away and returned to her lonely life. But something in his eyes made her hesitate. There was no pity there. No hidden cruelty. Just simple, honest kindness. Very well, she heard herself say. The inside of the Morning Star was smaller than Vela expected, but it felt warm and lived in. The walls were covered with photographs, small decorations, and handwritten notes. It smelled like spices and metal and something sweet she could not identify. A young woman emerged from the back, wiping her hands on a cloth. She had the same dark hair as Jiho, but her eyes were sharper, more watchful. She looked at Vila with open curiosity. So you're the famous conduit fixer, she said. I'm Hana. Jiho won't stop talking about you. Hana, Jiho warned. What? It's true. She grinned and gestured toward a small table. Sit down. Food's almost ready. Vila sat carefully, her hands folded in her lap. She watched as Hana brought out bowls of steaming soup, plates of vegetables, and a pot of white grain she did not recognize. It's called rice, Jiho explained, noticing her gaze. And this is kimchi jjigae. It's a stew. My grandmother's recipe. Hana served the food, placing a full bowl in front of Vela first. Then she served Jiho and finally herself. Vela did not move. Is something wrong? Jiho asked. You. Serve me first, Vela said quietly. Of course. You're our guest. Vela felt her throat tighten. Among the Talori, she was always served last. Often, she was not served at all. She had to take whatever scraps remained after others had finished. This is a human custom? She asked. Yeah, guests eat first. It's just polite. Jiho picked up his spoon and waited. Go ahead. Try it. Vila lifted the spoon with trembling hands. The stew was warm and rich, filled with flavors she had never tasted before. It spread through her chest like sunlight. It is good, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Hana beamed. Told you my cooking was amazing. They ate together, and Jiho told stories about his early days as a pilot. He described crashing his first ship into an asteroid, getting lost in a nebula for 3 days, and accidentally delivering cargo to the wrong planet. The client was so confused, he said, laughing. He ordered engine parts, and I gave him 200 boxes of decorative plants. Vela found herself laughing too. The sound surprised her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed out after dinner. Jiho packed the leftover stew into a small container. Take this, he said. For tomorrow. I cannot accept this. Sure you can. Hana always makes too much anyway. Hana nodded. It's true. He's doing you a favor. Otherwise, I'd have to eat it for a week. Vila took the container. It was warm in her hands. As she walked back to her quarters, she held it close to her chest. The corridors were empty and dark, but for the first time in years, she did not feel completely alone. When she reached her small room, she sat on her bed and looked at the container for a long time. Then, slowly, tears began to fall. She was not sad. She was confused. No one had ever treated her like this. No one had ever invited her to eat, served her first, laughed with her, or sent her home with food. These were things that happened to other people. Normal people. Worthy people. Not her. She wiped her eyes and placed the container carefully on her small table. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. He does not know what I am, she whispered again. But even as she said it, a small voice inside her asked, what if he does know? What if it simply does not matter to him? She pushed the thought away and lay down to sleep. But that night, for the first time in years, her dreams were not filled with darkness. She dreamed of warm stew, kind eyes, and the sound of her own laughter. The rumors spread faster than fire. Vila noticed the stairs first. Talori merchants who usually ignored her now watched her with narrowed eyes. Workers whispered to each other when she passed. Even the station guards seemed to pay more attention to her movements. She knew what they were saying. The broken female was spending time with humans. She was eating their food, laughing at their jokes, walking beside them like she had the right to be seen in public. It was shameful. It was disgusting. It was exactly what they expected from someone like her. Vila tried to ignore them. She went to work, fixed broken machines, and kept her head down. But the whispers followed her everywhere. On the 5th day, she received a message. Captain Nero wanted to see her. Nara was a military officer, cold and efficient, who had been Vila's superior years ago. Vila had served under her briefly before being transferred to maintenance duty. Nera had never spoken to her directly, but Vila remembered the way she looked at her. Like she was something unclean that had wandered into the wrong place. Vila reported to Nera's office in the administrative sector. The room was clean and organized, every item in its proper place. Nera sat behind a polished desk, her silver blue skin flawless, her presence commanding. Sit, Nera said without looking up. Vila sat. For a long moment. Nera said nothing. She finished reading a document, set it aside, and finally raised her eyes to meet Vila's. You have been seen with humans, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Captain, you understand how this looks. Vila clasped her hands together. I have done nothing wrong. Wrong? Nera's voice was cold. You are already a disgrace to our species. Now you choose to associate with primitives, with creatures who live and die in the blink of an eye, who have no biological refinement, no social structure worth respecting. Vila felt her cheeks burn with shame, but she did not look away. They've been kind to me. Kind. Nera laughed, but there was no warmth in it. They are kind because they do not understand what you are. The moment they learn the truth, they will abandon you like everyone else. She leaned forward. You are already nothing, Vila. Do not drag yourself lower. Vila's hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, to say something. But the words would not come. Nera waved her hand dismissively. Return to your duties, and stay away from the humans. Vila stood and walked out of the office. Her legs felt weak, her mind spinning. Nera was right. Of course she was right. The humans would eventually learn the truth, and then they would leave. And Vela would be alone again. She had been foolish to hope for anything else. Meanwhile, Jiho was having a very different conversation. He sat in a small trading shop, sharing drinks with an old friend named Yuntae. Tay was a human merchant who had lived on alien stations for over 20 years. He knew the customs, the politics, and the secrets that outsiders never learned. "So," Tay said, refilling Jiho's glass, "you've been spending time with a Talori female?" Jiho nodded. "Her name is Vela. She works in maintenance. I've seen her." Tay's expression grew serious. "Do you know about Talori's social structure? About how they treat their females?" "Not really. I know they're pretty strict about biology and hierarchy." Tay sighed and leaned back. "It's worse than strict. Among the Talori, a female's worth is determined entirely by her pheromone signature. The stronger the scent, the more valuable she is. Females with strong signatures get everything: money, status, powerful husbands. They live like royalty, and females with weak signatures, they get less. Worse positions. Fewer opportunities." Tay paused. "But there's something even worse. Some females are born without any signature at all. A genetic defect. It's rare, but it happens." Jiho felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "What happens to them?" "They're treated as non-persons. They can't marry. They can't own property. They can't hold any position of importance. Most of them end up doing the lowest work, maintenance, cleaning, things nobody else wants to do. Their families often disown them out of shame." Jiho stared at his drink. He thought about Vela, working alone in that dark cargo bay. He thought about the way she flinched when he reached out to her. He thought about her words, "I am considered broken." "That's horrible," he said quietly. "It's their culture," Tay replied. "I'm not defending it, but it's been this way for thousands of years. They believe it's the natural order. There's nothing natural about treating someone like garbage because of how they were born." Tay studied him for a moment. "You really care about this girl, don't you?" Jiho did not answer. He finished his drink, thanked Tay for the information, and left the shop. He found Vela an hour later. She was sitting alone on an observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her shoulders were hunched, her glow dimmer than usual. She looked smaller somehow, like she was trying to disappear. Jiho walked over and sat beside her. He did not say anything at first. He just sat there, close enough that she could feel his presence, but not so close that she would feel trapped out. After a long silence, he said, "Rough day?" Vela nodded slowly. She did not look at him. "Want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "Okay." They sat together in silence. Outside the window, cargo ships drifted by. Station lights blinked in the distance. The universe continued its endless motion, indifferent to the struggles of those who lived within it. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Vela finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you still here?" "Because you looked like you needed someone to sit with you." "I have never had someone just sit with me before." Jiho turned to look at her. Her golden eyes were wet, though she had not cried. Her hands were clasped tightly together, as if she was holding herself in place. "Then I'll sit with you whenever you need," he said. Viola's breath caught. She looked at him, searching his face for some sign of deception or mockery. She found none. "You are a strange human," she said. Jiho smiled. "I get that a lot." The station lights dimmed, signaling the start of the night cycle. Neither of them moved. Vela felt something growing inside her chest, something warm and terrifying. She did not have a name for it. She was not sure she wanted one. Names made things real, and real things could be taken away. But for now, in this moment, she was not alone. For now, that was enough. When they finally parted ways, Vela walked back to her quarters with a strange feeling in her heart. It was like a door had opened somewhere deep inside her, letting in light she had not seen in years. She did not know what the future held. She did not know if Jiho would stay or leave. if he would grow tired of her or discover some reason to abandon her like everyone else. But tonight, he had stayed. Tonight. He had sat with her in the darkness, without asking for anything in return. And for the first time in her life, Vala allowed herself to feel something she had long forgotten. Hope. Jiho's cargo run was almost complete. He had spent a week on Station Keth 4, unloading goods, negotiating contracts, and preparing for the next leg of his journey. In 2 more days, the Morning Star would leave, carrying spices and medical supplies to a human colony 3 systems away. Vila knew this. She had overheard him discussing the schedule with Hana in the marketplace. She had watched him shake hands with station merchants, finalizing the last of his trades. He was leaving, and she would never see him again. The knowledge settled into her chest like a stone. She had known from the beginning that this would happen. Humans live busy lives, always moving, always chasing the next opportunity. They did not stay in one place for long. They certainly did not stay for broken tolerary females. So Vila did what she had always done when faced with pain. She disappeared. She stopped visiting the common areas. She took extra shifts in the deepest parts of the station, where no one went. She ate her meals alone in storage rooms and returned to her quarters only when she was too exhausted to stay awake. For 3 days, she did not see G-Ho. On the 4th day, he found her anyway. She was sitting in an empty cargo bay, eating a simple meal of station rations. The food was bland and tasteless, nothing like the warm stew Hana had made. But it did not matter. Nothing really mattered. There you are. Vela looked up to see Jiho standing in the doorway. He was slightly out of breath, as if he had been walking quickly. His expression was a mixture of relief and concern. "I've been looking for you everywhere," he said, walking toward her. "Are you okay? Did something happen?" Vela lowered her gaze. "I am fine. You don't look fine." He sat down across from her, ignoring the dirty floor. "You've been avoiding me. Why?" She did not answer. G-Ho sighed and reached into his jacket pocket. "I wanted to give you something before I leave." He held out his hand. In his palm was a small pendant, no larger than his thumbnail. It was made of dark glass that seemed to hold light within it, shifting and glowing faintly as he moved. "Meteor glass," he explained. "From a fallen star that landed on Earth hundreds of years ago. It's a good luck charm where I come from. People give it to friends when they travel far away." He paused. "For safe travels, even if you're the one staying here." Vila stared at the pendant. It was beautiful, the most beautiful thing anyone had ever tried to give her. "I cannot accept this," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because Her voice broke. She turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth. Jiho set the pendant down gently beside her. "Vila, talk to me. What's wrong?" The words came out before she could stop them, spilling from her like water from a broken dam. "I do not understand why you are kind to me," she said, her voice shaking. "I have nothing to offer you. I am worthless among my people. I have spent my entire life being told that I am a mistake, a burden, something that should not exist. And then you come here, and you smile at me, and you share food with me, and you sit with me in the darkness, and I do not understand. I do not understand why you would waste your time on someone like me." Tears ran down her cheeks, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. She had not cried in front of another person in years. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like a wound that had been ripped open. Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved closer and sat beside her, not touching, just present. "Can I tell you something about humans?" he said softly. Vila wiped her eyes but did not answer. "Where I come from, we believe that every person has value. Not because of what they can produce or what they can offer to others. Just because they exist. Just because they're alive." He paused. "We have a saying, you don't get to decide someone else's worth. They decided for themselves. Vila shook her head. That is not how my people think. I know. I learned about your culture. About what they do to females like you. Jiho's voice carried a quiet anger, not at her, but at the system that had hurt her. And honestly, it's wrong. It's cruel. And it's based on something that has nothing to do with who you actually are. Vela looked at him, her golden eyes searching his face. You knew? You knew what I was, and you still what? Still talked to you. Still wanted to be your friend? He smiled gently. Vila, I didn't become your friend despite what you are. Your biology doesn't define you. The work you do, the way you think, the person you are when no one's watching. That's what matters. And from what I've seen, you're worth more than anyone on this station knows. Vila felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, but opening. Like a seed splitting so that something new could grow. Worth, she repeated quietly. I decide? You decide. She picked up the pendant. It was cool against her palm, the light inside it dancing like a captured star. She thought about all the years she had spent believing she was nothing. All the time she had accepted cruelty because she thought she deserved it. All the nights she had cried alone, wishing she had never been born. And now here was this strange human, this man from a distant world, telling her that none of it was true. That she had value. That she mattered. She wanted to believe him. She was terrified to believe him. I am afraid, she admitted. Of what? Of hoping. Of wanting something I can never have. She closed her fingers around the pendant. Every time I have allowed myself to hope, it has been taken from me. I do not know if I can survive losing it again. Jiho reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently placed his hand over hers. His touch was warm. I can't promise you won't get hurt, he said. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise you that right now, in this moment, you're not alone. And whatever happens next, you'll face it knowing that at least one person in this universe saw you for who you really are. Vila looked at their hands, his dark skin against her silver blue. Two different species, from two different worlds, connected by something that transcended biology or culture. Thank you, she whispered. Jiho smiled. Keep the pendant. And when you look at it, remember, you're not worthless. You never were. That night, Vela sat in her quarters, the pendant hanging around her neck. It rested against her chest, warm from her body heat, glowing faintly in the darkness. She looked at her reflection in the window. The same silver blue skin, the same luminescent freckles, the same golden eyes that had seen so much pain. But something was different. She stood a little straighter. Her shoulders were not hunched in shame. There was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. Worth, she said to her reflection. I decide. And for the first time in her life, she began to believe it. The grand hall of Station Keth-4 was filled with light and noise. Merchants from a dozen species gathered beneath the high ceilings, their voices mixing into a constant hum of negotiation and deal-making. Holographic displays showed trade routes and commodity prices. Servants moved through the crowd carrying drinks and food. And at the center of it all stood Lord Seven. He was tall even by Talori standards, with perfect silver blue skin and eyes that gleamed like polished gold. His clothes were made of the finest fabrics, his jewelry worth more than most workers earned in a lifetime. He moved through the crowd like a predator, accepting praise and admiration as if it were his natural right. Vila saw him the moment she entered the hall. Her blood turned to ice. Her feet stopped moving. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around and run. Lord Seven was the reason her life had been destroyed. Years ago, when Vila was still young, her family had tried to arrange a union with Seven's house. They had hoped that his wealth and power might overlook her defect, that perhaps a generous dowry could buy her a place in society. It was a desperate gamble, and it had failed spectacularly. Seven had rejected her publicly. In front of hundreds of witnesses, he had declared that he would rather bond with a cargo animal than accept a broken female into his house. He had laughed at her family's offer and suggested they sell her to humans, since primitives would not know the difference. The humiliation had destroyed everything. Her family left the homeworld in shame. Her parents stopped speaking to her. Her few remaining friends disappeared. Vila was left with nothing, not even the dignity of a private rejection. She had not seen Seven since that day. And now here he was, standing in the same room, surrounded by admirers who had no idea what kind of person he really was. Vila tried to slip away, to disappear into the crowd before he noticed her. But she was too slow. Seven's eyes found her across the hall. His lips curled into a cruel smile. He walked toward her, his followers trailing behind him like obedient shadows. The crowd parted to let him pass, sensing the tension in the air. Well, Seven said, his voice carrying through the hall. If it isn't the broken thing. I heard rumors that you were still alive, but I assumed they were exaggerated. Vila said nothing. She kept her head down, her hands clenched at her sides. And what is this? Seven reached out and lifted the pendant from her chest with one finger. A human trinket? How fitting. I always said you belonged among the primitives. He let the pendant drop and turned to his followers. Look at her, seeking scraps from lesser species. Is there no depth to which she will not sink? Laughter rippled through the group. Other Talori in the hall watched with expressions ranging from amusement to pity. Vila felt the familiar shame burning in her chest, the familiar helplessness, the familiar wish that she could simply disappear. Let her go. The voice cut through the hall like a blade. Jiho stepped out of the crowd. He was not a large man, not physically imposing in any way. His clothes were simple, his ship was small, his wealth was modest. By every measure that mattered in this hall, he was nothing, but he stood in front of Lord Seven without fear. Seven raised an eyebrow. And who are you supposed to be? Bak Jiho, human traitor. And a friend of Vela's? A friend? Seven laughed. You are friends with this? Do you understand what she is? She is defective, worthless. She cannot even perform the most basic function of her gender. I know exactly who she is, Jiho said calmly. She's a skilled engineer. She's intelligent, hardworking, and kind. And she deserves better than to be mocked by someone who measures worth by biology instead of character. The hall fell silent. Even Seven's followers stopped laughing. No one spoke to Lord Seven like that. No one. Seven's expression hardened. You dare lecture me, human? You, whose species lives barely a century, whose civilizations crumble while ours endure. You know nothing of our ways. Jiho did not flinch. I know enough. I know that where I come from, we have a saying. The measure of a civilization is how it treats those who have nothing to offer. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. By that measure, I wonder which of us is truly primitive. The silence that followed was deafening. Seven's face twisted with rage. For a moment, it looked like he might strike Jiho down where he stood. His followers tensed, waiting for an order. But Seven was not stupid. This was a public gathering, filled with witnesses from multiple species. Attacking a human traitor over words would make him look petty and weak. It would harm his reputation far more than the insult itself. So he smiled instead. A cold, dangerous smile. Enjoy your pet human while you can. Broken thing, he said to Vila. When he leaves, and he will leave, you will have nothing again. He turned and walked away. His followers closed behind. The crowd slowly returned to its business. Though many continued to stare at Vela and Jiho, some looked at them with disgust. others with something that might have been admiration. Vela stood frozen, her heart pounding. G-Ho turned to her. "Are you okay?" She could not speak. She could barely breathe. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever stood up to her tormentors. She had always faced cruelty alone, accepting it as her fate. "You should not have done that," she finally said. "Why not?" "Seven is powerful. He will not forget this. He will find a way to hurt you." Ji-Ho shrugged. "Let him try. I've dealt with bullies before. They're usually more bark than bite. This is not a joke, Ji-Ho. He could destroy you. Maybe." Ji-Ho's expression softened. "But I couldn't stand there and watch him treat you like that. No one deserves to be spoken to that way. Especially not you." Vela felt tears burning in her eyes again. She blinked them back, refusing to show weakness in public. Hana appeared beside them, her face tight with concern. "I heard what happened. We should go back to the ship." "Agreed," Ji-Ho said. He offered his arm to Vela. "May I?" Vela hesitated. Taking a man's arm in public was a gesture of partnership among both humans and Talori. For her to do it would be a statement, a declaration that she was not ashamed to be seen with him. She looked around the hall. Dozens of Talori were watching, whispering, judging. Her whole life, she had tried to make herself invisible to avoid their contempt. Not anymore. She took Ji-Ho's arm. They walked out of the grand hall together, Hana beside them, heads held high. Vela felt the weight of countless stares, but she did not look back. For the first time in her life, she was not hiding. For the first time, she was standing tall, and the pendant around her neck seemed to glow a little brighter, as if it approved. Seven's revenge came 2 days later. Vela was in her quarters, preparing for her morning shift, when the door chimed. She opened it to find 2 Talori security officers standing in the corridor. Their expressions were cold and professional. "Vela, maintenance technician class 7? One of them asked. "Yes. You are hereby terminated from station employment, effective immediately. You are also being detained for questioning regarding suspicious association with foreign agents." Vela felt her blood run cold. "Foreign agents? I do not understand. The human traders you have been associating with are under investigation for potential smuggling activities. As their known associate, you are required to cooperate with our inquiry." It was a lie. Vela knew it was a lie. Ji-Ho was not a smuggler. He was a simple cargo pilot who traded spices and machine parts. This was Seven's doing, using his influence to manufacture charges that would give him legal cover to punish her. "I have done nothing wrong," she said. "That will be determined during questioning. Please come with us." Vela had no choice. Resisting would only make things worse. She stepped out of her quarters and allowed the officers to escort her through the station. As they walked, she noticed other Talori watching. Some looked away quickly. Others stared with satisfaction, pleased to see the broken female finally getting what she deserved. They passed through the commercial district, heading toward the detention center. Vela's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what happened to people who were detained on false charges. They disappeared into the system, emerging weeks or months later broken and silent. Sometimes they did not emerge at all. She thought about Ji-Ho and Hana. She hoped they would leave before Seven came for them too. She hoped they would forget about her and continue with their lives. That was better than being dragged down with her. The security officers turned a corner and stopped. Ji-Ho and Hana were standing in the corridor, blocking their path. "Let her go," Ji-Ho said. The lead officer scowled. "This does not concern you, human. Step aside. She's my crewmate. That makes it my concern." Vela's eyes widened. "Ji-Ho, what are you doing?" "Saving you." He stepped forward, placing himself directly between Vela and the officers. I know what's happening here. Lord Seven is using false charges to punish her for embarrassing him. There's no investigation. There's no evidence. This is just revenge. These are internal tolerary matters, the officer said. You have no authority here. Actually, I do. Jiho pulled out a datapad and held it up. I'm formally offering Viola employment aboard my vessel, the Morning Star, under the Interstellar Trade Agreement, Section 47, Clause 12. Any individual employed by a registered human trading vessel gains human-affiliated status. She cannot be detained without human consent and oversight. The officer looked at the datapad with disbelief. You cannot be serious. Very serious. I filed the paperwork an hour ago. It's already been processed and approved by the station's Human Liaison Office. Jiho smiled, but there was steel behind it. So unless you want to explain to your superiors why you created an interspecies incident by illegally detaining a human-affiliated worker, I suggest you let her go. The officers looked at each other. They had not expected this. Seven's orders were clear, but creating problems with the human trade coalition can have consequences that went far beyond one broken female. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Everyone turned to see Captain Nira approaching, her expression unreadable. Vela's heart sank. Nira would surely take the officer's side. She would find a way around Jiho's legal maneuvering and ensure that Seven got his revenge. Nira stopped in front of the group. She looked at the security officers, then at Jiho, then at Vela. What is the situation here? She asked. This human is interfering with a lawful detention, the lead officer said. The detention is not lawful, Jiho countered. It's based on fabricated charges designed to punish Vela for associating with humans. There is no evidence of wrongdoing. Nira was silent for a long moment. Her golden eyes moved to Vela, studying her. Vela met her gaze without flinching. She was tired of looking away. She was tired of being small. Captain, she said quietly, you know this is wrong. Nira's jaw tightened. Hana stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her brother. We're not leaving without her. If you want to detain her, you'll have to detain us too. And then you'll have a real interspecies incident on your hands. The corridor was silent. Everyone waited for Nira's decision. Finally, Nira spoke. Stand down, she told the officers. They stared at her in disbelief. Captain? I said stand down. There will be no detention today. She looked at Jiho with an expression that was difficult to read. Take your crewmate and go. Jiho nodded. Thank you. Nira did not respond. She turned and began walking away. But before she disappeared around the corner, she paused and looked back at Viola. I never thought a human would teach me what honor looks like, she said quietly. Then she was gone. The security officers retreated, their faces dark with frustration. They would report this to Seven, but there was nothing they could do now. The law was clear. G-Ho turned to Viola. Come on. Let's get you to the ship. They walked quickly through the station, Hana keeping watch behind them. Vela's mind was spinning. Everything had happened so fast. One moment she had been walking toward destruction. The next, she was free. Why did you do this? She asked as they approached the docking bay. Because you're worth fighting for, Jiho said simply. They reached the Morning Star. The ramp was already lowered, waiting for them. Jiho gestured for Vela to board first. She hesitated at the bottom of the ramp. Stepping onto this ship meant leaving everything she had ever known. Her job, her quarters, her entire life on this station. She would become a wanderer, a member of a human crew, traveling between stars with no home to return to. But then she thought about what she would be leaving behind. The cruelty, the loneliness, the endless years of being treated as nothing. What was there to hold on to? She climbed the ramp. Jiho and Hana followed. The ramp closed behind them with a soft hiss. The airlock sealed. Vila was inside. "Welcome to the Morning Star," Hana said with a small smile. "It's not much, but it's home." Vala looked around at the warm, lived-in interior. The photographs on the walls. The handwritten notes. The smell of spices and metal and something sweet. "It is more than I have ever had," she said. Jiho put a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure it stays that way." Through the viewport, Vela watched Station Cath 4 grow smaller as the ship pulled away. The place where she had suffered for so many years was just another point of light now. Fading into the darkness. She touched the pendant around her neck and felt something she had never felt before. Freedom. 3 weeks in space changed everything. Vela learned to navigate the corridors of the Morning Star without bumping into low-hanging pipes. She learned where Hana kept the spare tools and which cabinet held the emergency rations. She learned that Jiho hummed old songs when he thought no one was listening, and that Hana secretly read romance novels on her datapad late at night. She learned what it felt like to belong. Her days fell into a comfortable rhythm. She helped with repairs, keeping the ship's systems running smoothly. She cooked meals alongside Hana, learning human recipes and teaching her a few Talori dishes in return. She sat in the cockpit with Jiho during long stretches of empty space, watching stars drift by in silence. No one told her she was worthless. No one looked at her with pity or disgust. No one avoided her in corridors or whispered behind her back. For the first time in her life, Vala felt like a person instead of a burden. One evening, she found Jiho alone in the observation deck. He was sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, looking out at the endless field of stars. "May I join you?" she asked. He smiled and patted the floor beside him. "Always." She sat down, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with understanding instead of awkwardness. "Can I ask you something?" Vela said. "Of course. Why did you help me?" "The real reason. Not the speeches about human values or individual worth. The real reason." Jiho was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the stars, his expression thoughtful. "When I was young," he said slowly, "I was not very good at anything. School, sports, making friends. My parents worked constantly, so I spent most of my time alone. I felt invisible, like nothing I did mattered." Vila listened without interrupting. Then one day, a teacher noticed me. She did not treat me differently from the other students. She did not give me special attention or extra praise. She just saw me. She asked about my interests. She remembered my name. She made me feel like I existed. Jiho smiled at the memory. It changed everything. I started trying harder. I found things I was good at. I made friends. I built a life. He turned to look at Vila. "When I saw you in that cargo bay, working alone in the dark, I saw myself. I saw someone who had been made to feel invisible. And I thought, if one person noticing me could change my life, maybe I could do the same for someone else." Vila felt her eyes grow wet. "You saw me before I saw myself. I just saw what was already there." Jiho reached over and gently touched the pendant around her neck. "You were never broken, Vela. You were just surrounded by people who were too blind to see you." She leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes. The warmth of his presence spread through her like sunlight. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For treating me like I mattered. Before I believed I deserved it." Jiho put his arm around her shoulders and held her close. "You always deserved it." They sat together until the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the stars shifting from streaks of light back to distant points. Through the viewport, a green and blue planet came into view. "New Dawn Colony," Jiho said. "Our destination." Vila had never seen a human world before. As the morning star descended through the atmosphere, she pressed her face against the window like a child, watching clouds part to reveal forests, rivers, and clusters of buildings. The ship landed at a small trading port on the outskirts of a town. When the ramp lowered, Viola hesitated. She had not walked among strangers since leaving Station Keth 4. She did not know how humans would react to her. Hey, Hana appeared beside her. Whatever you're thinking, stop. These people don't care what species you are. They just care if you're friendly. Vila took a deep breath and stepped down the ramp. The market was alive with color and noise. Humans of all ages walked between stalls, buying food, trading goods, laughing with friends. Music played from somewhere nearby. Children ran between the adults, chasing each other and shouting. No one stared at Vela. A few people glanced at her with curiosity, but there was no malice in their eyes. Some even smiled and nodded in greeting. Jiho walked beside her and offered his arm. She took it without hesitation. They wandered through the market together, looking at strange fruits and handmade crafts. Vela tasted something called chocolate for the first time and decided it was the most wonderful food in the universe. She watched a human couple dancing in the street and felt something warm bloom in her chest. A small girl ran up to them, no more than 5 or 6 years old. She had bright eyes and messy brown hair. She looked up at Vila with open wonder. "You're so pretty," the girl exclaimed. "You look like the stars." Vela was so surprised that she could not speak. The girl held up a small flower, yellow and white, clearly picked from somewhere nearby. "For you?" Vila knelt down to accept the gift. Her hands trembled as she took the flower from the child's small fingers. "Thank you," she managed to say. The girl grinned and ran off to rejoin her friends. Vela stayed kneeling, staring at the flower in her hands. Pretty. The child had called her pretty. Not broken. Not defective. Not a mistake. Pretty. Jiho helped her stand. He did not say anything. He did not need to. They continued through the market, Vela holding the flower like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Because to her, it was. That evening, they sat on a hill overlooking the town. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Below them, lights flickered on in windows as families gathered for dinner. "I never imagined a place like this existed," Vela said softly. "There are hundreds of human colonies," Jiho replied. "All different. Some are better than others. But most of them have one thing in common. What is that? They try to give people a chance, no matter where they come from or what they've been through." He looked at her. "Everyone deserves a chance to start over." Vela turned to face him. In the fading light, his features were soft, his eyes gentle. "You treated me like royalty," she said, "before I believed I deserved it." Jiho shook his head. "That's not royalty, Vela. That's just how you treat someone who matters." She felt tears spill down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Then humans understand something my people forgot." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a tolerant gesture of deep affection. Jiho did not pull away. He closed his eyes and stayed with her, his breath warm against her skin. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Vila thought about her old life. The cold corridors, the cruel whispers, the endless loneliness. She thought about the person she had been, small and broken, and convinced she had no worth. That person was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone who had been seen, valued, and loved. Someone who had traveled across the stars and found a home. Someone who had learned, finally, that her worth was not determined by others. She decided it for herself. Jiho took her hand and held it gently. "Ready to head back to the ship?" Vela looked at the stars one more time. Then she looked at him, at this strange, kind human who had changed everything. "Yes," she said. "Let us go home." They walked back together, hand in hand. Under a sky full of infinite possibility, Dot and Vela, who had once believed no one desired her, finally understood what it meant to be treasured, not because of what she could produce, not because of what she could offer, but simply because she was herself. And that was enough. That had always been enough.